Okay, we're recording.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I'm gonna hand it over to Michelle so that she can go ahead and introduce Derek, or did we want to conduct business first?
Why don't we do a 5-minute business meeting first? Does that make
That
more
makes
sense?
sense. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
We have $4,500 plus for a treasurer's report.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think we've had several new members that have joined. Michelle has sent out certificates and
We do, and it is time to join because it's January, because
To renew.
all DOVIA memberships last from January to December, so everybody came up for renewal on January 1st, so if you haven't done that yet, please do that. I will send you a certificate, a newly updated certificate.
give them the prices.
$35 for an individual membership or $100 for an organizational membership up to 4 people. So that's actually a really good deal, $25 a person. So, I think at the moment we only have a handful of members because everybody is newly
Coming back.
Coming back.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you want to do a meeting where we tell what's going on too, or do you want to go straight into the?
Well, I kind of
Derek.
want Derek's time.
Okay.
So I would like to go straight into that.
Well, then, may I introduce him? Would that be acceptable to you, Madam President?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, ladies, good morning.
Is this a member?
Hey, Monique. Come on in.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Morning.
Sit over here on this corner because we're trying to make a clump for the camera.
Here. Yeah.
Or there next to
Next to
Derek,
me.
or
Or
there
here.
next to Mom. Okay,
Hey, how are you? I'm good.
so,
We can have a clump here.
So I would like to introduce Derek Alley. He's the president of Arthur Alley Associated. He's a certified fundraising professional. I think that's your correct title. And he has been a friend to the nonprofit community for many years, and I have been privileged and honored to be his friend for probably going on 2 decades. So, who better than to tell us about how to find wonderful board members than someone who talks about money and grants and boards and nonprofits all day? So, Derek, thank you for taking time to talk with this lovely group of women this morning.
Well, thank y'all for inviting me. Before we get started, may I take a photograph with you
Sure.
to mark this occasion?
Yes.
Okay.
And since we're taking photos, I'm gonna request that you email me that photo.
Okay,
Please.
you got it. Let's see.
Please.
I'm not good with selfies.
Uh-uh.
We're gonna do it though.
Well,
Let's see, oh my God, okay, I may need help getting up. Okay,
Monique,
Miss Mary,
Oh,
you might
thank
need
you.
to squinch around here and get.
there we go.
Can you get, wait,
Well,
you
do I
got
need to get up
Monique?
or-
You got Monique?
Yeah. Monique, get here behind
Here,
us.
let's do this. Come here,
Let's
Monique.
make it,
We'll
let's make.
do-
Yeah, we'll
do
just
a
stand
pile
there.
here. We'll do a pile here.
That's good.
You get it?
Okay, good.
just a little bit.
There we go. Oh my goodness, y'all are amazing. There we go.
Good morning.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Derek.
Thank you. This caused an accident.
Can you put us all in if we're?
Okay, Miss Sylvia, good morning. We've already introduced the speaker, which is Mr. Derek Alley, and he's just gonna go ahead and proceed. We stopped for a photo. But thank you for joining us this morning, and Happy New Year.
Elizabeth, Sylvia, sorry y'all had to watch me get up and down on the. Don't tell anybody.
We went, mom's the guard.
We have a photo of it.
Yeah.
Nothing ever goes away.
Yeah, sad but true.
Nothing ever goes in.
I would like for us to consider our conversation today as a conversation and less of a presentation. the reason that I'm excited to spend some time with you today is because this is, I see, something that where I can have a benefit too. Because the company that I work for, we represent not-for-profit organizations and we help them with strategic planning, fundraising planning, and fundraising implementation. And the stronger a board is, the easier my work is. So I've got a vested interest in having this conversation with you all today. I have, as Michelle noted, I started my work in the development world in 1991 in October. So I think that's over 30 years that I've been working in this area. And I did not put this presentation, this slide deck, which I'm happy to share with any of you, by the way, after the meeting, did not put this together alone. My colleague Julie helped me. Julie is in New Orleans, and Julie has even more experience in the fundraising world than I do. And she also has spent a lot of those years working with different volunteer boards. So as we collaborated to put this together, I wanted you to know that it's not just me, and you've got some really, especially Julie, some very talented people that thought about this. So I would like, though, to, as we talk about this, to note one thing. When we wrote this PowerPoint, we pretended like we were talking to DOVIA about the DOVIA board. So in the PowerPoint presentation, you may see references to DOVIA, but what I want you to keep in mind is this is meant to be useful to everybody, any not-for-profit organization. To help me better understand where you're coming from, Mary, I know you're an executive director. Is everybody else a volunteer coordinator? Nope. Executive director? Executive director?
Director.
Okay, perfect. So we have high-level management people in the room. So I'm gonna talk to you all from that high-level management perspective. That's good. So in other words, coming from this, from the CEO side of things. And since it's a small group, and Elizabeth, Sylvia, since we are a small group, feel free to interrupt me at any point if you have a question or an illustrative comment. Great. And as I understand, this is being recorded too.
Yes, this is being recorded, correct?
Okay, so we can, you'll be able to watch this and share with other folks. And before I forget, if you want some additional information from Arthur Alley about board members, you can go to our website, arthuralley.com, and there is on the website a resource section. And if you put your email in, you can download our board member toolkit. And it is chock full of information. I mean, it's a huge, it's like a folder with all these documents in it. So you can download the board member toolkit, and that may be of some help too. Let's get started. Any questions before we do? Okay, cool. This slide lets me know why this conversation today is important. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but more than half, the top half of the slide, more than half of nonprofit leaders report that it's difficult to recruit new board members. And since we're all high-level executives in the room, only 73% of chief executives state that they have the right or effective board members. So have you ever sat in a board meeting and looked around the room and thought, God, I got it. There's got to be something better out
Who are these guys? Who are these
there. Yeah, there's got to be something better out there than this. No offense to all of our wonderful volunteer board members, but there, as we're going to talk about today, board members have a role, and board leadership is super important. And as Julie and I talked about it, there are four very important roles that we think board members and our board leaders fulfill for us. And by the way, here we are meeting at the Mississippi Alliance for Nonprofits and Philanthropy. And the Alliance has tons of good information about board best practices. So don't forget the Alliance as a resource too when you are traveling your journey to improve your board, or even continually work to strengthen the DOVIA board. The first role that's important for a board is to help any organization identify who they are. I talked about how Arthur Alley helps with strategic planning. So when we start a strategic planning process, we always start with the board first, and we talk about what is your mission, what is your vision, what are your values, and we ask the board to help determine that. So the board is very important in helping establish who you are and where you're going to go in the future. So after we talk about mission, vision, values, we talk about, well, where can we go? And the board helps establish and helps maintain consistency, especially if it's an organization that changes in the executive director or CEO role. The board can be a nice source of consistency. Second, the board ensures that you've got the money. We call it resources on the slide, but the Alliance has an awesome guide about best practice responsibilities for board members. And right up near the top of the list is board members are responsible for helping us secure the funding we need for our mission. So as we think about board members and consider board members, we need board members who can, to use the crass language, either give or get finances, because it's not about us, it's not about them, it's about the mission. They also provide oversight of finances, policies, and strategy. And those three things help provide direction for the organization. And they assess themselves annually, hopefully, and also the work of the leader of the person in the CEO spot, our executive director spot, but not others in the organization. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. So they manage themselves, and they manage the top leader in the organization. Questions about that? So keep that in mind. And let me say, if you've got something to write on, that includes the notes section on your cell. As we're talking, I'm hoping that you're going to have some ideas about, oh yeah, I should call thus and so. That this conversation is helping me think that they would be good on our board. So jot their names down and keep that running list. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So who is an exceptional board member, and how are we going to fill these empty seats, and who do we want in these seats? And I wonder who you might have in mind for that. So jot names down and be thinking about that. And let's answer the questions about what makes and who is an exceptional board member. I'm going to attempt to answer. These are some of the answers we came up with, that Julie and I came up with. Exceptional board members create partnerships. So these are people who I said who earlier who can give and get. They're people with a network, for better or worse. For better, they have a network, and they're excited to share their network with the organization, with DOVIA and the organizations that you represent. So they're somebody who might, what we call it in work with our clients, is they can open a door for you. They can help tell your story. And they can help raise money that goes along sometimes with the door opening. So as noted on the slide, they can create a bond of trust and support with the executive director. So the better your relationship with your board members, the more they can and will do for you. So how can you strengthen the bond of trust between yourself and your board members? What have y'all done through your careers to do that?
Well, I gave birth to the chairman of our board. Because
That's one way to do it. That's one way to do it.
Literally.
Yeah.
And we have recently tried to, move him out of the chairmanship,
Mhm.
but the rest of the board thought he ought to stay there, so
They won't let him go.
no, but he didn't really want him to. So,
What are some other ways that you all have, I'm looking at the people on the screen too. What are some ways that you all have worked to strengthen the relationship between yourself in a leadership role for the organization and your board?
Elizabeth.
I will, thank you for mentioning me. Derek, I'm retired from my work at the Department of Archives and History, but my husband is on a couple of boards too, and I'm listening to all of this, taking it in because I think it would help him too. But in my role at Archives and History, I started a volunteer newsletter that was devoted simply to our volunteers, a lot
Wonderful.
of whom were our donors. And I documented basically all of our events and all of our projects that were going on, working with the staff.
Mhm.
And so I encourage the staff members to be part of this newsletter and write stories and take pictures, trying to bring all stakeholders to the table. And what I would do is I would send a separate email to the board members and let them see what the volunteers were doing. And one of the board members was a big publisher, and he just loved that newsletter. I had no training, I did it in publisher, but that man looked for that newsletter every 3 months, and he
Mhm.
always replied all and just would have the loveliest things to say. But I would get a lot of feedback from these board members, and some of the staff who were very high up would say, well, Elizabeth seems to have more communication with them than a lot of us. And it was a way of building a relationship with them because they knew a lot of these volunteers. They were in their social circle. And in my mind, I feel like it made a stronger friendship, relationship. They could go, if they saw any of these people at parties, they could thank them for their service. And so I just felt like it made for better relationships for everybody. And I just feel like sometimes with boards, they're not active, but this one was and is. And this helped them with their desire to help the organization because they had more information. That was
Mhm.
basically it. So that was one way I could help with that. And I was not in that upper tier on the board, I was just a worker bee who was trying to connect people. And I feel like that's basically what we do in our roles as people who raise money and people. It's about connections, networking, like you had mentioned earlier. Who do they know? That kind of thing. So that was my contribution, and I will put myself on mute.
Thank you. That is a really great example. And the thought that occurred to me as Elizabeth was describing how she made sure that the volunteer newsletter was distributed to the entire board is I was thinking about the volunteers who received that newsletter. Those people are your potential board members. So, and even
That's it.
if you are not creating a newsletter that, and it's so easy to do that these days in Publisher or wherever, even if it's just a text thing, you can, people want to be in the loop. And that is a very easy way. A client of ours he writes a newsletter, but he also is prone just to snap a photograph of something happening and text it to the board. Nothing fancy, just here's a photograph. I thought you all might enjoy it. And that's a way he has built relationships and bonds of trust with his board. Another thing that you might do, and January is an awesome month to do this, by the way, is to spend time visiting every single board member one-on-one to say, number one, thank you for your service on the board. Where would you like to go this year? And are there any, so basically you could do a mini SWOT with them, talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Are there any things that you're seeing out there happening that as an organization we really need to be careful of this year? So that one-on-one conversation is a great way to say thank you. And another thing you could do is, hey, is there anybody, as you think about your service on the board, are there other people in your network that would be good to introduce to our organization? I know when I was on the Association of Fundraising Professionals board for the Mississippi chapter, we would always talk about who else, what other development directors were out there that we could add to the board. In addition to the partner, the bond of trust, we're already talking about building partnerships with people out in the community. So board members help build those partnerships. When you're in a meeting, hopefully because they're in the loop, they're having this good conversation, a meaty conversation about how to move the organization forward and helping address challenges that the organization has. So you're also working to look at, identify, and take advantage of opportunities. Julie and I felt very strongly that we also need to make sure that the board, and you can define yourself the word diversity, but to celebrate diversity on the board, whatever that looks like, because everybody looking like you around the table is not going to help come up with the best decision for the organization. We need a variety of viewpoints and people who come from different walks of life, maybe people who don't look like we do, maybe who don't think like we do, to create a strong organization that we can move forward. So
I have something to add
yes,
here. So when I worked for the Mississippi Commission for Volunteer Service, which then became Volunteer Mississippi, one of the things that I noticed about the board that I thought was good, there were things that I didn't like, but one of the things that I thought we did well was we had a combination of well-established professionals that were in their 50s and 60s. And we always had at least two people who were basically teenagers. I mean, I think one of them joined the board when he was 19 or something. So in addition to all the factors you just mentioned, we also thought age diversity was important
Mhm.
because, the newer ideas are going to be absolutely obvious to the 18-year-old, the 19-year-old, and that person won't have the same thoughts as the 60-year-old.
That's
So
right.
that was also just one other way to think about diversity. It isn't just gender or skin color or whatever, but it could be age, or it could be, I think in some ways it also depends on what sort of a nonprofit you have. If you're a nonprofit that deals with, for example, disabilities,
Mhm.
you should probably have some people with actual disabilities on your board.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I would just add to that, the exciting thing about that was the young man that she's talking about went on later to become the board chair.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he stayed around and he was still there the last time I knew. He may not now, but
Well,
I mean, it was a long-term commitment because he got excited early.
mhm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So that's how board members can help us create partnerships. And above all else, we want to avoid creating a homogeneous board. Exceptional board members also put the organization first. So they walk in without any personal agendas. I referenced this a little bit earlier. Although boards manage themselves and the executive director, they don't micromanage the rest of the organization or other employees. And I think that's important to let boards know. They are willing to understand the policies, and they want to know what's going on. I think that's a two-way street, because if we expect a board member to be exceptional, we have to give them the tools to be exceptional. And that means being a complete open book when it comes to finances and other policies within the organization. So they need to be an informed, if they're going to be exceptional and put the organization first, they need to have information to help them do that. We want, therefore, as they're learning, to encourage them to ask questions, to fully understand how the organization functions and the benefits of the organization that the organization provides. Because if the organization isn't providing a benefit, then the organization shouldn't exist. And as they learn about that, just like the example I gave of sending texting a photo out to the board, they can share it around or share Elizabeth's volunteer newsletter. So let's give them the tools to help them be exceptional. Exceptional board members are joyful, and we can drive the joy, by the way, by giving them more stories to tell. So even Michelle, in your example, there was a teenager on the board. I'd still put them in an adult category. Although maybe sometimes teenagers don't always act like it.
Adults don't either.
Yeah, right, yeah.
He was definitely older than some of the other board members.
So
Responsible.
one of the things that you can do with telling the story is give people different ways to tell the story, whether it's sharing something on Facebook or posting it to LinkedIn or from the website, or sending a newsletter or texting a photo, and that is gonna make people excited. As adults, we remember stories, and we remember to some extent data points. So I encourage you to think about and share at every board meeting a story or two that is illustrative of the mission of the organization. And as it relates to the mission, one, you can pick and choose. You've got a myriad, but one significant data point that you want somebody to remember. I'm amazed at how board members, if you give them something that they can remember, a story and a data point, they will tell others about it. So that means that we as leaders have to be very careful about the data point we choose, right? Let's talk to the members of our team, think it through, and think about what we want our board members, the stories we want our board members to tell.
Would you, excuse me, give an example of what you mean by a data point?
A data point might be, I'm thinking for you, Mary, because you have a camp that I assume serves campers from all over the state.
It will.
So you could talk about, last year we had campers from X% of counties in the state.
All right.
And that's something that somebody could talk about. And don't forget, when you're saying that percentage, we're working towards 100, for example. What is another data point that y'all think is important or you would want to share? Give Mary some other examples.
Well, she did it with you at the beginning. You took the information to Derek and you said, look, this is what we got now, but this is what we want to have.
Mhm.
And you already did
I
it.
agree. I think you got your data points. You just didn't know that they were data
That's
points.
what's called that.
Uh-huh.
That's a
Called that. Yeah.
great observation.
Yeah.
Great observation.
I want to say too, you're already good at this, Mary. You're already good at telling people, we're going to serve children that have this, and this. We anticipate we're going to have 50,000 kids a year. We anticipate, you're already doing this. You're just not using that word.
And you also describe your needs amazingly.
Yes.
We need 3 tables. That wonderful chart that you had that said, this is what we need, this is how much it's going to cost, and this is what we don't have, this is what we need, and this is how much it's going to cost, and this is how you can help us.
Okay. I just wasn't sure what the term.
That's absolutely, you're doing it.
Thank you.
Any
Mary,
other
she's
suggestions?
right. You are supremely good at this, Mary. I mean, she nailed that.
Yeah,
You're probably
Yeah.
one of the best.
yeah.
Thank you.
Other examples? Cool.
Well, data points, I think if you had something to show your board that showed a return on what you're doing, in my world with friend raising, I would always let them know how many hours these people served and what the value was to the organization. And that was always very exciting to them.
Mhm.
So, you get this number of how much a volunteer hour is worth on a
Mhm.
national level or a state level. And that was always very exciting to them. And, also have these stories that drive the passion of the organization. So I think that's really important because some people think in dollars and cents. I do not, but I know that some board members roll that way and it's important. I mean, you have to know your dollars and cents, but it's helpful to them so they can see the picture.
That is a very good suggestion because it relates directly to DOVIA, and that is a superb data point for DOVIA to be talking about in the state. Is that data point that you just stated. Good job.
I want to add just one other, it's sort of a question, comment. If you're a new executive director in an organization, your discussion of going to the board members and talking one-on-one would be interesting to have them train you. Because they may know a whole lot more about what this is than you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a very presumptuous to go in and say, here, I'm going to train you but it would also reinforce what they knew and how they could be helpful to you. That linkage, that partnership
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes. And here's hoping that the executive director whatever that role is, the leader has enough self-confidence to go in and accept, to see and accept that wonderful gift. Because in the exchange that you just described, the board member is giving a huge gift, a gift of information and experience to that executive director or the person in the leadership role. The sad thing that I've seen happen is that many times the executive directors, I just mention this as a word of caution to all of us, and as a reminder, we often forget to step outside of our personal stuff and into our professional role and realize, I seen it happen to me as I was younger, and learning to be a leader. When somebody is giving you that gift, it's not about something you're not doing. It's them sharing what you can do, and I want to show you that. And my hope is that all of us will always be open to recognizing that and accepting it. So thank you very much.
And to know what you don't know. I mean,
That's right.
you can't know what you don't know. So you have to be, your ego has to kind of get out of the way, and you have to be a learner in that situation.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Very well said. Y'all are so smart. So where do we find all these board members? So here are some tips to identify and recruit these exceptional board members. The first is, before you start talking to prospective board members, is to talk about what your organizational needs are. So what do we need on our board to support our mission? Everything is about the mission, right? So what do we need? Do we need, I think about professional work areas represented on the board. Do we need a banker? Do we need an attorney? Do we need an accountant? Whatever, and it just doesn't have to be that, but what do we need? And that's where some kind of board assessment tool can be very helpful, because often a board assessment tool literally helps you chart out what is represented in the different current board members you have. And by looking at that chart, you can then see the gaps that you have. And that can help identify your expertise needs. And then once you identify that, Julie, I love her term in the second bullet point, a chum chart. So who are your chums? Who are your friends and your professional
Who do you chum the water with?
acquaintances? Yeah, when I read that, I thought, yeah, okay, we're gonna throw out some bloody fish bits to attract a shark. But who are your chums, or who are the chums of your board members that they might want to invite to participate on the board? And from the chart, you can then make a wish list of people. And let me say it the way that I will always say it. Let's start at the top of the organization. Let's start with the CEO. And if the CEO of it, let's say, we want, I don't know why it's coming to mind, we want Haley Fasackerly on our board at Entergy. Okay, let's go talk to him and ask him. And he may say, wow, I love your organization. Nope, not something I can do, but let's get X person to do it. Okay, great. So start at the top and really make it a wish list. But it's still not time to ask somebody to serve on the board yet.
So what did you just go ask them?
Well, we've made our wish list. And I was given an example. I'm sorry, I jumped a step ahead. So we've made our wish list of starting at the top. And then let's take a look at our internal nomination process. So if we have a nominating committee, good. If not, we need to form one and create a process and make sure that everybody on the board is aware of the nominating committee process. Okay.
One question. This keeps coming back, so I'm gonna ask. Are boards always limited to a number of people, and how is that determined and who decides that? And I mean, the bylaws do that, but I mean, in the reality of things, how do you,
What's a good number for a particular different
good number, but
organization?
Two.
me and somebody else?
Me and her.
And when you tie, what do you do?
Yeah, you bring.
No, but I mean,
It's okay.
if you come into an organization,
Uh-huh.
it's already established and there's already board bylaws and all that kind of thing. And there is a limited number of spaces that are filled already. And you do the assessment and you look and you see, this is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Then it just takes time till the people leave. I mean, is that how you have to play the game?
Well,
I mean, that's all that the nuts and bolts of it. I mean,
my opinion, let me say, I've never read anywhere, and it may just be Derek not reading enough, but I've never read that there is a magic number for a board. I think that the mission of the organization and the scope of the organization can determine that number. And whatever that number is, it doesn't have to always be that number, because you can change the bylaws and change the number. One thing that you might consider to inform what that number is, I like the idea and subscribe to the idea that you have 3 classes. So there are always classes. The board is divided up into classes. So if there's somebody that you're waiting to get off a board, people, good boards, people don't join really exceptional boards for life. They join, there's a term, and that term is going to expire. And they would roll off, and there's something in the bylaws that allows somebody to be reelected if they want on the board. But I think if I were speaking with an organization that was really questioning, is our board the right size, I would take it back to the mission of the organization and ask, given your mission, do you need more people or do you need fewer people? We've worked with organizations, and the board needs to be an odd number for the just for the example that Michelle was just joking about. If we need to break a tie, but it doesn't always need to be a large board. We do a lot of work with one organization that has different chapters, if you will, all around the nation. And the number that they generally choose is 24.
for a nationwide thing.
No, they have many regional boards
Okay.
around, but 24 is an even number, so it shouldn't be 24, should it? So it's some odd number. I don't know why 24 settles in my brain. But even in that organization, if it's a large urban area, like Atlanta or something, they could have and do have over 50 board members. But you don't have to have that many board members. If you want, to have 15, I generally think of 3 classes. So 3 classes of 5. Depending on the mission of the organization and the mission of the organization and your organizational expertise that you need, that can drive the size of the board.
May I add something to that?
Sure, please.
So another thing that I've seen in the work that I've done and in the things that I have read is that there's also sort of different groups because everybody doesn't have to be on the board. You have a group of 11 people or whatever, and they're the ones who are responsible for the books. They're responsible for fundraising, etc. But if you need 10 more people to do these various committees, you just create committees that have other volunteers who aren't necessarily board members. So they're doing sort of adjunct work.
Mm-hmm.
And the executive director would create these?
Well,
Or
With
appoint.
help
or-
from the board.
Okay.
so basically, here's a good example. I was recently selected for the International Certification for Volunteer Administrators, CCVA board. This has previously been a board of, I think, 6 or 7 people. They just selected a whole bunch of extras, so that now there's 15 of us. But they also said, Michelle, you're marketing and communications, and I'm a committee of 1. So my task is to now go find 3 or 4 people to help me, but they're not going to be board members, but they're still going to be on the marketing committee.
They're going to be supportive of you.
Right. So maybe it also depends on what you mean by board. If you mean people that you
Can
know
vote. I mean,
can vote
people
and
who
sign
vote would be the
checks.
board members, would be people who voted.
Right. But there may also be committees that sort of act in board roles that aren't necessarily board members.
Right. I guess what I'm sitting here playing with all along is that there are boards that are established forever, that are a fixed number or not,
Right.
that are vested in staying a board member because of whatever reason. They want it on their resume, whatever, but it's not effective. And they're not being an effective board member, the board's not being effective, but because they're making the decisions about who comes on or who stays on, how do you impact something like that? I mean, if the fox is, managing the hen house, how do you make a change in that? I mean, you can do what Elizabeth said and excite people, but if people are being stagnated about it, how do you break that deadlock? And maybe that isn't part of your presentation.
It could
but
be it is not, but we can address it just for a second, and it could be a contentious discussion, but one that might need to happen for the health of the organization and the continuation of the mission, because the stagnant board, I'm sure, is not serving the mission of the organization.
Right.
So you could
Now,
have
the board,
the
executive
existing board members could vote for a change in the bylaws and literally outvote that person so for instance, if this board does not have classes, and that's what's going to ensure that the person that's stagnating everything will roll off, is them being in a class and their term ending.
in their term.
And if this board does not have those classes, the structure written into their bylaws, a group of the board members, because every year, a best practice of the board every year is to review the bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
So in that annual review, the board could vote to amend the bylaws and to form classes. And literally, if it's a group that exists and you're going to form classes from the existing group, you literally draw straws to pick numbers out of a hat to put yourself in the classes.
And the classes are, you said there's.
Year 1, year 2, year 3. So when you start the board, people in year 1 class, their term is a 1-year term on the board. Year 2 class, their term is a 2-year term. And then year 3 class, they get a 3-year term. And from there on out, all of the new classes might be a 3-year term.
Okay.
So no board member is ever going to serve for more than 3 years.
Oh, so this class piece of it
Term
built in,
limits.
term limits,
That's
built into the system.
That's right.
Okay.
We did something this year. We have, in our bylaws, it can be 15 board members. We have 9 right now because it's been unpleasant, but basically the ones that were not doing a thing, on the board, it was my job to talk to them. And we established, the whole board agreed on some guidelines that were not part of the bylaws, but the guidelines were they would contribute to our foundation. Everybody had to make a financial contribution if they were a board member. They had to attend half of the board members' meetings. We only meet 4 times a year. They had to attend 2 of them. They had to attend at least one fundraiser that we were having a year, and they had to attend at least one party that we were giving for special needs kids a year. These were the guidelines. And so at the end of last year, there were some board members. I had to say to them, these are not things that you have been doing. The way I would say it, because I'm a coward, was wouldn't you like to consider getting off the board? We need your expertise. We formed an advisory board. We would like to move you off of the board onto the advisory board. And they were thrilled. And so none of them turned into an unpleasant, heated discussion, but I went into it dreading it so much that I thought it was going to be.
Well, and that's sort of where I was. I was thinking, this must be an awful thing to say to somebody, you're not doing what it is that you agreed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of giving them an alternative, and we'd like you in this position, that's brilliant.
They
That's
were
what
put
boards
on the
are very
board in the first place
Boards
because
are
they
very
had an
sensitive.
expertise in
Yes,
something.
that's right. And those board members know that they're not living up to their responsibilities, and they're looking for an off-ramp. And in the example that you gave, wanted an off-ramp, and you provided one. So in that situation, and what you might consider asking the nominating committee to do is help you in your leadership role of the organization think about annual commitments from the board. So board members are asked to give time, talent, and treasure.
Mm-hmm.
What are the annual commitments? What does the board's annual commitments of time, talent, and treasure look like? And you literally, for one client, we worked with them to come up with this list. And there was at the bottom of the list, and I think it was titled annual commitment form or something like that. At the bottom of the list is a signature line and a date line. And every single year, board members are asked to recommit to that list. And to formalize it, they sign it and date it and turn it back in. And that, to Mary's example, you've got them on the hook at that point, and can say, during the past year, you made this commitment, and for whatever reason didn't meet all of our commitments that we all agree to as board members, and would you like to move to serving in a different capacity, like on this advisory council, or serving as an ad hoc member of the marketing committee,
Yes.
so that you aren't saddled with the responsibilities of serving on a board. And for, if it's the person who is a founder of the board, you might say, you give them this esteemed emeritus, make them an emeritus member. So emeritus members don't have a vote on the board, but they'll always be listed as a member of the board. So you move them into an emeritus role.
It's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
You're creating a win-win situation because that person may still have, they would still have the connections with the community that they could mess up with you
That's right.
if they are unhappy with you.
That's right.
So it's a reason to do it, but it's the right thing to do to make it a win-win situation.
And they will understand, hopefully, if their role currently is stagnating the mission, they will hopefully appreciate and understand why they're being asked to serve this organization in a different way. So you all are pros at this. I don't even know why you called me to do this. The other thing that we have to do is cultivate potential new board members, and this process can be led by the nominating committee with assistance from all board members. And so Elizabeth was talking about the volunteer newsletter. So there may be recipients of that newsletter and people on our wish list that we want to think about becoming board members. So we need to cultivate them. So we've made our wish list, looking at our chum chart, and the nominating committee is going to work with the lead guide, the entire board, to design an initial approach to each of those people on the wish list. So this is a way, you might consider this, Mary, you've got these five, you're at 9 right now, so you've got 6 slots you need to fill for your classes. So you all hopefully have a wish list. Then let's create a strategy or an approach to each of the people on the wish list to, I would suggest, go sit down with them and say, I'm here today. We're not here to ask you to serve on this board. We would like the opportunity to tell you about the organization, answer any questions you have, and assess your interest in serving on the board. So it's literally like an interest conversation. And go see them, tell them about the commitments that are expected for service on the board, so everybody's on the same page, and then see if they're interested. And if they're interested, the third bullet point, you might, and this, I've seen organizations do this, invite them to attend a board meeting. And in the board meeting, you could say, hi, everybody, board members, I'd like to introduce you all to Derek Alley. He is, he has exhibited interest in serving on the board, and he's here today to learn more about and to see what how we conduct board meetings. Let's please welcome Derek. So invite them to a board meeting, give them a tour. And even if Derek chooses not to serve on the board, you still have shared some really wonderful information and strengthen your relationship with him. So cultivate potential new board members. And by the way, the identification, their identification, the board is helping do that. And then finally, as we look at exceptional board members, we've got to set them up for success by providing a board member orientation that generally is a 2 to 4 hour time window when hopefully the new board members receive a tour of the organization. I think of multiple people helping with the orientation. The program director is going to give everybody a tour. The finance director is going to come in and talk about the annual budget and the finance reports and answer questions about that. Then the CEO is going to provide an overview of marketing, or maybe the marketing director will come in and talk about that. And the development director might talk about the fundraising and how things are going on that front. Provide an orientation that might last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. It's on site at the organization site. Create, because one of the major responsibilities for the board is raising money, create an annual development plan and a job description. My business partner, Bill Arthur, said, I don't really like the term job description. So here's a new term that y'all can use, because volunteers shouldn't have a job, right? You get paid for a job. Right. So the term that Bill really liked was here is your functions and responsibilities list. So not a job description, functions and responsibilities list for new board members. Acknowledge and celebrate the gifts new members bring to the table. So whenever you bring a new member in, make them feel welcome, even if it's something as simple as, hey, everybody, we're going to go around the table. I want you to tell what you do, and for no more than 30 seconds, talk about why you choose to serve on this board. That helps people understand others' personal stories. We do this with the knowledge that exceptional board members are going to attract other exceptional people to the board. To make sure that board members are engaged, because 9 times out of 10, somebody's not serving on a board just to come to a meeting. They want to be engaged. Think about matching them, a new board member, up with a mentor, a longtime mentor on the board. So that is everything that I've got for you this morning. Do we have any questions?
I
That's good.
have a question. Really, it's to ask you for a diagnosis and a fix. And it has, it's not our DOVIA board that I'm thinking about, and it's not a board that my husband serves on. This is just, let's just call this just a question. Don't want to point out.
You're
but-
asking for a friend, right?
Well, it's actually a board that is somewhat connected to something we do.
Got it.
It's a large board. They're supposed to be in a support role, not the board, but the organization. And I don't know how to say this. The board members are all very lovely people, very well educated, but I think what is broken, and I do think it's broken, is the fact that they only choose a leader to serve 1 year, maybe 2 years. And I think because of that, they don't have the institutional knowledge to lead the group into good decisions. And I mean that sincerely. So this board relies on information they get from a singular person who may not have the knowledge base to do the job that needs to be done. So I would call it misinformation. And they're basing their decisions on misinformation. So because this board does not have a leader that sticks for a long time, it's my opinion that's some of what's wrong. But how would you fix something like that when it's like they don't have the correct information and they're just kind of oblivious as to the decisions they're making, the impact that it's having? So I don't know if I asked that to where you can understand it, but what would you call that and how would you fix it?
Let me give a shot, and we'll see what everybody else around the table has to suggest. What I hear in that is the need for a succession plan, or a succession map, if you will. And it could be addressed in the bylaws, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And I'm thinking about a couple of different organizations where I have or currently serve on the board. And in those organizations, there is a president and a vice president. And to serve in the role of board chair or board president, you must first serve a year in the role of vice president or vice chair. And that ensures, Elizabeth, that there's some continuity, and they have to spend a year learning and gathering information before they're actually in the leadership position. And in those same boards, the immediate past chair also is always a member of the board for 1 year. And that means you've got somebody learning, somebody acting in that role as chair, and then you've got a learned, experienced counselor that you can rely on and ask questions. So between those three people, you've got nice continuity of information. Plus, you've got the executive director. And my hope is between those three people, plus other members of the board, the executive committee, you might be able to dispel what you did characterize as misinformation, or make sure the right information is out there, if you will. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I just, I don't know how that is going to happen when they may already have a succession plan, but I've not seen it in practice.
Got it.
I guess this is great though. I wrote it all down. I'm going to remember it. I think a lot of it is trusting that they're getting correct information that's being presented to the board, and they're basing their decisions on that. So this is real good so that they know what the organization's about. But to get the current stuff, I'm just not sure how that can be fixed.
Well, I think, and I think that a board assessment we've got to get on a journey, a path to figure out, like Fran said, so that the board can determine or identify what they don't know. So somebody needs to snap their fingers and wake these board members up. And I'm wondering if an assessment, some kind of tool where the board self-assesses the board could be a way to do that. Because until there's a recognition that there's information that we're basing our decisions on bad information, until that's known, there's a chance that things might not get better. The question too, in the back of my mind is, where are the new board members coming from? And I'm sure this doesn't have anything to do with the question you're asking, but I was thinking about like a commission in the state. There are going to be some organizations where, and the commission is not a not-for-profit organization, but in some cases there may be the governor may be appointing board members or members of the commission, and as much as you like or dislike whatever is happening, you're not going to have much to say about that because the board, somebody else is appointing those members of that board. But
Good point. Thank you.
even
That
if the nominating committee is strong and getting good members of the board, you still need to wrestle with how do we have good, solid information that helps us make decisions for moving the mission of this organization forward.
Well, I wrote it all down, and I think these are excellent things to think about and great suggestions. And I'm glad you brought up the point about others appointing board members, because that is a factor. But this is helpful, and it was not pointed at any one thing. It's not DOVIA and it's not anything else. It's just something I have watched and I would love to see fixed. And so this will help. Thank you so much, Derek. And I've loved your presentation.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments that you all want to make? Things you want to talk about?
Well, I noticed that Charlotte Brown has joined the conversation or the Zoom meeting, hybrid, and I was just wondering if you had something to say. I see Sylvia left. I guess she thought I was going to put her on the spot. Charlotte, can you hear us? Oh, okay.
Well, thank you again for the invitation to be here. I hope it's been helpful.
Yes.
If you have questions, I'm always available to answer them and help however I can. You can catch me at Derek, DEREK, at arthuralley.com. That's my email.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you
Sylvia,
so much.
y'all hear me? This is Sylvia. I did not leave. I don't know what's going on with my iPad, but I'm very much here and trying to get the video on. So, wow, it's been great. I've learned a lot. I only wished I had this 11 years ago. And then I know that I've got to tweak several things with my board. I'm going to have to tweak it. Thank you so much for this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you, Sylvia. Derek, if you want to send me these PowerPoint slides, I
Okay.
will put all of this on the DOVIA website.
Okay, cool.
Wonderful.
And I'm
Happy to
gonna
do it.
request that y'all get up there, so that I can get Elizabeth in the photo. I wanna get a photo, cause y'all know I'm.
And I want to do one quick thing, not after your photo.
Okay.
I think that we need to introduce ourselves so that you'll know who we are. I mean,
Yes.
we've never been in the same room before.
Right, right.
And we want you to come and stay and play with us. Let's take a picture.
Well, she's a vice president, so
Well,
she
I
doesn't have
understand.
a choice. She has to.
I understand that, but
She's a board member. She has to.
But she. what we-
Oh, Children's Museum, sorry. Okay. But I guess she's on site together.
So I guess we can stop this recording.
Mind that cord there.
Yes. I think we ought to put Derek in that.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't think you should take all the pictures.
No, no, no,
Maybe
no.
there's somebody out there that would come take one.